Okay, so buckle up for this one because today we're diving into a real behemoth,
Yeah.
the U.S. auto industry.
A behemoth. Yeah, you could definitely say that.
And we've got this Wikipedia article about it. And let me tell you, it is dense, packed with more twists and turns than a mountain road.
That's a good way to put it. Lots of hills and valleys in this story.
And what gets me is how much we take cars for granted. Like, we just hop in and go. But the story behind them, that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just think about it for a second. Over 1,900 different car companies have existed in the U.S. alone.
1900.
You're kidding me.
Nope. And those early ones, some of them, get this, weren't even gasoline powered.
So what were they, like horse-drawn carriages with a fancy name?
Not quite. Think steam and electric cars. That's right, electric cars, way back in the day. Wow. See, this is what I'm talking about. History hiding in plain sight. So we're talking like the Wild West of cars, right? No rules, no roads, just a bunch of inventors tinkering away in their sheds.
Pretty much. It was a time of incredible innovation, but also incredible challenges. No paved roads to speak of, tons of competition, different technologies, all vying for dominance. It was a real free-for-all.
And in the middle of all that, you've got this whole legal battle brewing, right? This Wikipedia article mentions something called the Selden patent.
Ah, yes, the Selden patent. Now that's a story and a half.
Lay it on me. What was it all about?
Well, imagine this. Someone today tries to patent the entire concept of a smartphone app. That's essentially what this guy, George Selden, did in the late 1800s. Only he set his sights on gasoline-powered cars.
Hold on. He wanted to patent the entire idea of a gasoline car?
Essentially. Claimed his patent covered any road engine using a liquid hydrocarbon engine. So anyone who wanted to build or sell a gas-powered car pretty much owed him royalties. Talk about a roadblock.
That's insane. That's a good thing we have antitrust laws now. But seriously, what impact did that have on the early industry?
Almost strangled it in its crib. I mean, you can imagine, right? Legal battles everywhere, innovation stifled because one guy claimed he owned the very idea of a gasoline car. It took some real visionaries to fight that patent, to pave the way for the industry to, well, take off.
And when you talk about visionaries, you've got to talk about Henry Ford, right?
Absolutely. Ford was a force of nature. He saw the potential for the automobile to transform society, and he wasn't afraid to fight for it, both in the courts and in the factories.
And speaking of factories, let's talk about the car that really put America on wheels, the Model T.
Ah, the Model T. More than just a car, it was a revolution. It changed everything.
I mean, it wasn't exactly a looker, was it?
You're not wrong there. It was all about function over form. But that was Ford's genius, you see. He wasn't interested in building flashy cars for the wealthy few. He wanted to build a car for the masses, a car that was affordable, reliable, and easy to maintain.
And that's where the assembly line comes in, right?
Bingo! Ford perfected the assembly line, which allowed him to build cars faster and cheaper than anyone thought possible. He brought the price of the Model T down from around $850 in 1909 to just under $300 by the 1920s.
Wow, that's a game changer. Suddenly, cars weren't just for the rich and famous.
Exactly. The Model T put America on wheels, and it's no exaggeration to say that it transformed the country.
It's amazing to think about how one car, the Model T, could have such a huge impact. But Ford wasn't the only one with big plans, right? I mean, there were other players entering the game.
Oh, absolutely. The success of the Model T created a whole new industry practically overnight. And other companies saw the potential, saw those dollars, and they were eager to get in on the action.
And that's where we get the rise of those iconic American car brands, the big three, Ford, GM, Chrysler, names that are like synonymous with the American dream.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how each of those companies took a slightly different approach. I mean, Ford, as we've seen, was all about efficiency, affordability, making cars for the everyday person. But GM, they had a different vision.
Yeah, GM, they were all about what? Style?
Yeah,
Status?
you got it. They saw the car as more than just basic transportation. They saw it as an aspirational object, a symbol of success. You know, start with a Chevy, move up to a Buick, and if you really made it, well, you treated yourself to a Cadillac.
Right. It's like those brands became these markers of social status, almost like rungs on the ladder of the American dream.
Exactly. GM understood that people weren't just buying cars, they were buying into an image, a lifestyle. And they were brilliant at marketing that image.
But then, boom, the Great Depression hits. Talk about a U-turn. I can't imagine what that did to the auto industry, which was still relatively young at that point. How did it survive?
It was a make-or-break moment, that's for sure. Many smaller car companies, some of them doing really innovative things, just couldn't weather the storm. They went bankrupt, just like that.
It makes sense, though, right? I mean, when times are tough, people cut back on luxuries. And back then, cars were still seen as a luxury for many.
Right. But the big three, they had a few advantages that helped them survive. One was, well, their size. They were big enough, had enough resources to kind of hunker down and ride out the storm.
They could absorb some losses that would have sunk a smaller company.
Exactly. But size wasn't the whole story. They also had something else going for them. Diversification. GM, in particular, with its multiple brands targeting different segments of the market, they were able to weather the storm a little better than some.
So even though people were buying fewer cars overall, GM could still appeal to those who were buying, even if it was a cheaper Chevy instead of a Cadillac.
Yeah, it was about adapting, being flexible, and that's a theme we see again and again in the history of the U.S. auto industry.
Diversification, resilience, always adapting. That seems to be the name of the game, especially in the auto industry. And after the Depression, well, things really took off, didn't they? I mean, we're talking about the post-World War II boom years, chrome, fins, V8 engines, those iconic American cars we all picture.
It was a time of abundance, optimism, and the American car really became a symbol of that, you know? Freedom, prosperity, open roads. It all just kind of came together.
It's funny, you can almost hear those old commercials in your head, right? Like, take her for a spin on a sunny afternoon.
Exactly. It was a whole different era. And those cars, they were gas guzzlers, sure, but they had personality, they had style.
They don't make them like they used to, right?
That's what people always say. But then the 70s hit. Talk about a reality check.
Oof, yeah, the 70s, oil crises, safety concerns, those fuel-efficient Japanese imports suddenly showing up everywhere. Not to mention Ralph Nader was like a one-man crusade against Detroit.
He really was. I mean, he was tough, but he raised some important points about safety that the industry couldn't ignore. And then you've got those Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda really disrupting the market with their smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. It was a perfect storm.
How did the big three handle that? It must have been tough to pivot from those big, powerful gas guzzlers to, well, something a little more practical.
Yeah, it was a real struggle at first. They tried to adapt, but some of their early attempts, well, let's just say they had their issues.
With the Chevy Vega.
Oh, yeah, the Vega. Poor Vega. It became notorious for rust problems, among other things. Just wasn't built for the long haul.
And then, of course, you have the Ford Pinto. Talk about a PR disaster.
Yeah, the Pinto really showed how safety concerns could make or break a car and a company's reputation. And it wasn't just the engineering flaws, it was how Ford handled the whole thing. You know, it felt like they were putting profits ahead of people.
A real lesson in what not to do. But it wasn't just about economy cars, was it? I mean, those Japanese brands, they were moving up market too. Lexus, Acura, they were going head-to-head with the luxury brand.
Absolutely. And that really put the pressure on Detroit. They had to up their game, improve quality, innovate. They couldn't just rely on their old tricks anymore.
So, in a way, that competition from Japan, it was actually a good thing for the American consumer.
Oh, without a doubt. It forced the big three to innovate, to compete on quality and fuel efficiency. And let's be honest, a lot of the innovations we take for granted now, fuel injection, front-wheel drive, more aerodynamic designs, a lot of that came from the pressure to keep up with those Japanese automakers.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it? Competition really can breed innovation.
It's the story of the auto industry in a nutshell.
And what a story it's been. From those early days of dirt roads and steam-powered cars to the high-tech, fuel-efficient, and even electric vehicles we have today, the U.S. auto industry has been through it all.
Yeah.
And through it all, it's been this incredible engine of innovation, shaping not just the way we get around, but also our economy, our culture, and even our dreams.
It really has. And, you know, as we look to the future with electric vehicles, self-driving cars, all these new technologies emerging, it makes you wonder what's next for the American car.
That's the big question, isn't it? And one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating ride. So thanks for buckling up and joining us for this deep dive into the amazing world of the U.S. auto industry.
My pleasure. Always a good time talking cars.